Lori, Brian just walked into chambers, so it'll just be a minute.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll call the public safety meeting to order. Councilmember Kinnear, you're the chair.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. Great, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay, abstain? Okay, great. Thank you. We have a few requests to take 1 and 2 off the consent agenda for a little bit more detail. So the first one was WTSC SBD interagency agreement for LEL program. Is there anybody that could give us about a 5-minute explanation on that?
I don't know if I can make it 5 minutes, but if you want, I can try to wing it from my days back in traffic.
Okay, can you do
Gary might even
it
be
in
able to chime in.
6 or 7 minutes?
Okay.
All right.
Do you, later though, right?
No, you can go now.
Oh, all right. So the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission is just that. It's a commission authorized by the state. They work with law enforcement agencies across the state. The LAL actually stands for Law Enforcement Liaison. It's for us to be able to talk to other law enforcement agencies as well as other groups out in the community to work together in partnership. That funding, it looks like it's a total, only a grant of like $3,000 that helps pay for that LAL time. I believe Sergeant John Griffin is now the Spokane Region's law enforcement liaison. That will help pay for his time spent in those activities. Any questions on that?
Questions from council? Councilmember Burke? No? Okay. Thank you. And number 2 on the consent agenda, also we had a request for some more detail. Who would be able to talk to us about that? And just if you don't have it in front of you, it is the interagency agreement for Target Zero priority. Anybody? We just got that request today, so I'd understand if nobody can talk about it.
Yeah, I can talk briefly about this as well. This is going to be basically the state traffic commission will offer different jurisdictions overtime to go out and do emphasis patrols. And so these are overtime opportunities to go out and do emphasis patrols for DUI, distracted driving, folks you see on their phones while they're driving, and then motorcycle safety and speeding as well. So it's really going to be an opportunity for overtime for officers to work. Usually you're going to see that they're going to do this outside their normal work hours, evenings or weekends, and they're given $26,500 to work overtime for those specials.
Councilmember Cathcart, did you have questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, in general, with the Target Zero program, what is the, in terms of the big picture, what's the strategy to zero, and what's the plan to get there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In a couple of years ago, my daughter went through traffic school, and they showed a video for the Traffic Safety Commission, and they asked these people from Washington State, you know, how many deaths are acceptable on Washington State's freeways in a given year? You know, and people would throw out, you know, 200, 500, 100. So then they asked the question of, okay, well, what if one of those 100 was your son or your daughter? And they said, no, that wouldn't be acceptable. I just remember that because it was powerful. So what their goal is to have 0 traffic fatalities that are caused by the DUI, texting and driving, speeding. So that's their ultimate goal is to make sure we don't have anyone die anymore on our streets from improper driving behavior.
Any other questions by council? Great. Thank you, Chief. All right, next on our agenda, we're going to go right to Sergeant Spearing. Do you want to give us a quick update on K-9? And last month we had, actually it was earlier this month, we got an introduction about who you are and what you do. So this time let's hear a little bit about how K-9s were deployed, if they were deployed, and just a little bit more detail on that program.
You bet. First thing I did is get some better Wi-Fi at the house, so hopefully you can hear me and I stay connected. So just a quick recap for August. Our total deployments are 67. It's a lower than average month. We had one officer try to catch up on some vacation since his accrual was at the max, and another one still off on baby leave, and he'll be back the first week of September. So 67 deployments, 0 bites or contacts. Of those 67 deployments, 24 people were contacted or captured. So 0% bite ratio for August. So rather than just say, well, that's an anomaly, 0%, we're doing awesome. July, we were 101 deployments, 36 captures, 1 contact. So we were 2.7%. And our year average is 2.4% on a bite ratio. The training for August is the same as it has been. We focus mostly on apprehension and tracking. And if you think of apprehension is when a dog is used to apprehend somebody using their mouth, not opposable thumbs. The apprehension, the reason the training percentage is so high on apprehension, that's 33% of what we did in August. Tracking was 25, obedience was 18, and it kind of goes down from there. Most of that apprehension is not the dog biting somebody and training that. It's the officer handling the dog in an apprehension scenario. And like you see, the majority of our captures result in no bites. So training the right type of apprehension deployment. And that's exactly why we spend that much time on it. One of the notable apprehensions we had this month was August 26th. We had a murder suspect holed up in a house with 2 other people, at least. Officer Stone and Haywire were outside making canine announcements. 2 people exited the residence that were not involved or wanted in any way. They gave up right away. Then the more canine announcements were made once the door was opened and the suspect came out and specifically stated, keep that dog away from me. He was taken into custody with no incident whatsoever. The dog was used to search the house then, and because we didn't know if anybody else was inside, the dog was back behind everybody else and kept on a short lead. So still using the dog's nose to sniff out different rooms, but not letting him roam around the house or putting him in a situation where he would have apprehended somebody by contact. And for the first time at least all year, because I have to approve every deployment that this happens, we haven't done this at all this year. We did use one of our dogs to do a community caretaking find. So our policy allows for a community caretaking function, uses the dogs to search and locate that person. And that can only be done when the need to find that person outweighs the possible risk of them being contacted by the dog and the injury that might occur there. Example I will give you is, 20 degrees in the wintertime and somebody with Alzheimer's has walked away from the house and we have no other way of locating and we might use the dog. In this particular case, it was Friday the 28th, just a few days ago, at 6400 North Aubrey L. White Parkway. We had a single vehicle crash and a deceased male outside the vehicle laying in the roadway, had been there for some time. It appeared like there were other victims because there were 2 bicycles underneath the car and nobody else was located there. So Canine Trace was deployed to search the area around the vehicle and see if he could pick up any scent of a trail to locate victims. None were located, fortunately, and it turned out the bikes had been on top of the car before the car collided. So we were able to rule out the need to locate and render aid to anybody else. So that about sums up our August deployments, and be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Cathcart.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment real quick. I had an opportunity to do a ride-along early this month with Officer Buckman and Trace, and it was a really great experience. And I think the dog was deployed twice, not because of any actual issues, but really just kind of as a backup mechanism for some false alarms. And so we investigated those, and there was no issues. But what I thought was really interesting was on one of them, he certainly could have utilized the dog, and instead, realized that there were some community members in the area and some folks, that if there was an incident that could potentially be at risk, and so he chose not to take the dog out of the car, and again, non-issue, nothing really came of it. But I was just very impressed with his handling and the way that whole process went. So look forward to doing it soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Thanks so much. That was a great update, and I look forward to September's as well. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Mr. Crago, you are up, giving us a COVID update.
Good afternoon, everyone. Try not to repeat myself based on last month's COVID updates, but they're actually a lot better from the high-level view to the community that we have definitely went over the plateau. And while our cases are still high in terms of hospitalization, testing, positives, they are falling. And there's still a level of concern from the health district. There's also a level of, I don't think they use the official term cautious optimism, but that's something along those lines, that they're encouraged by what we're seeing. The mask order's been in place long enough now that it's clear that whether anecdotally or through the surveys have done, we've got a lot of people, like in the 90s, wearing masks around our community, and that's good. Testing remains robust in the area, as well as contact tracing. Those are all good things that are probably, good examples of why we're moving in the right direction. Concerns right now are college students coming back. I'm told, never did that myself, but that college students occasionally like to party. And at Wazoo, they had some, I don't think they used the term outbreak, but there are a lot of students getting together and spreading more than good cheer. So Dr. Lutz is working with our police officers still on the education first, but to really keep the word out and work with the local universities that will have dormitory style living and or outdoor parties. I mean, you can drive down Mission and watch beer pong from the street. Makes it pretty easy to say, hey, get a mask on, back up, whatever. They'll be working a little bit on that. We're still monitoring City Hall on the inside, preparing for phase 3, what we call Operation Homecoming, kind of our way to protect staff and the public when they're at City Hall. Everything mask, distancing, hygiene, cleaning, and accountability. And if you're in City Hall, you'll check in. We've been doing that for maybe a month now, maybe 3 weeks. Temperature check, cleaning, et cetera, new signs all over City Hall. As we move towards phase 3, there'll be a lot more in-depth department by department things that we do regarding air filters, elevators, shields, et cetera. I can answer any question about any of those, but that's still a little bit of a living document as we get closer and anticipate phase 3, what specific things we would do at City Hall. The group at kind of what's left of the old emergency operations group still meets on Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock with the health district and kind of goes over data and kind of remains that policy setting, discussion having, nimble response group to look and study and talk to one another. End of report. Any questions?
Councilmember Cathcart.
I've mentioned this before, but I would just love to see any kind of performance reports you have that kind of shows the efficacy of the work from home since COVID has been in has been in our lives, and just to see what that looks like, and whether or not perhaps in the future that something like that might not be something we want to continue going forward with.
That's a great thing. It comes up in discussions a lot, council member, on when we look at staffing requirements or we need a new building or we have to move a department. It's always looked at in terms of, is this called pre-COVID or post-COVID staffing? And the general feeling is that we'll probably need a little less space going forward. That at the moment it seems to be working well, but we'll need to put some time in on that.
Other questions for Mr. Crago? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate that update. Going on to Council President, the VRTA discussion. I'm not sure if Jackie's going to be briefing that.
Yeah.
Who will be?
So I just put it on after our last demonstration. I had a few different people talk to me about wondering if we could get some community input on particular episodes that were being considered. And I had a long email conversation with the chief about it. And I won't speak for him too much other than I wanted to make sure that I was not proposing that the community members would set our training policies or which modules that we used. But I thought it would be helpful if we built into the plan a community review and giving input on things that they felt might be advancing or furthering stereotypes or being unproductive, so that the training staff at least had that input when they decided which episodes to use in our particular police department. So I was hoping that we could get that process figured out before we decided which episodes to buy and spend money on. So that was my request. And the department, I heard back from them of like, let's get this done sooner rather than later, because they have some needs for updated episodes.
So how do you want to proceed? Do you want to have a work group? Do you want to work with Ms. McConnell? How would you like to proceed? I think
just an offline conversation with a couple of council members who are interested and anyone from SPD to figure out how to accomplish that.
Okay. And Ms. McConnell, did you want to add anything?
I'll go ahead and weigh in here real quick too. So apparently the training commission has basically said they're going to go ahead and pay for this. The academy started, Jackie, how long ago did this current academy start?
Last week.
Okay, last week. So they want to move forward and try to get there as soon as possible. So they said they will go ahead and coordinate the purchasing of that. And the reason they want to do that, obviously, is because they have this academy right now that's occurring. So they want the Burien Academy and the Spokane Academy to mirror each other. So they move forward. But one of the things we did talk about this morning is Jackie said she definitely would be willing to meet with CP and others and have that conversation as well. But it sounds like the Burien is asking us, let's please move forward on this and get this thing purchased. Is that accurate, Jackie? Is that?
And so, Council President, is that something you can work with the chief and Ms. McConnell offline?
Yep. Yes, and sounds like we saved some money by delaying a little bit, but that wasn't the point of it. But still, okay. So yes. Okay.
Mr. Cathcart, go ahead.
Yeah, well, actually, maybe this is already answered, but do we buy these like on a per episode basis, or is it just a suite that includes all of them, and it would be more of a discussion as to which ones are used?
So yeah, and just clarify, we will provide a little bit of money for this as well. The training commission is going to pay the bulk of it. I'm going to the suites. Yeah, they provide the suites as well. And I think one of the things that probably started this was the concern with the scenario that was used to demonstrate the system itself. And so just again, not to reiterate necessarily everything that I said in the email, a lot of these scenarios are not pretty, and they're not designed to be pretty, because a lot of the calls that our officers go on are not pretty calls. They're very tense, and they can be chaotic. And sometimes they'll want to throw in some of the hot topics that are occurring across the nation. They try to use, and I don't know if they exclusively use, but they try to use a lot of scenarios that have actually happened around the country as well, and then they'll reenact those for officers to learn. One of the benefits of this software, my understanding is before it used to be very linear. You'd have the scenario in front of you, and no matter what you said or did, it was a very linear process. You could do everything exactly correct, and if it de-escalated, it de-escalated. If it didn't, it didn't. My understanding with this new technology is the instructor is able to modify the scenario as it's occurring based on what tools the officer is using. If the officer is doing great de-escalation and that's the direction we want them to go, and they're using it appropriately, they can push a button and that scene changes to de-escalate. If not, then they can push a button and it will go the direction we don't want it to go, and then afterwards they sit down and debrief it. But again, some of these, looking at it from the community perspective, it's probably concerning, but unfortunately the reality is those are a lot of the types of calls that our officers go on as well, and you want them to start to build up a little bit of that. Maybe inoculation isn't the right word, but you want them to get used to going into these scenarios where things are loud, they're chaotic, you're trying to figure out what's going on, so that they can start to build those paradigms, those schemas in a training environment, rather than when they're going out into the field for the first time. We want them making those decisions not based on their emotions, but based on the training that we've given them for 4.5 months.
Since new Virtua is being purchased, I guess, right now, because the state wanting this to go into effect, when will it be in place in Spokane? And specifically, if it is in the near future, I would love to come out and not only experience the new one, but also observe the officers in the academy, the cadets, with it, see what the instructors are telling them and how that follow through is happening.
Okay. And Jack, I think it's the state's paid something like $100,000 and we're at $33,000, or is that accurate? Okay. And then, we didn't invite any of the council members. We actually used to use that quite a bit when we were doing the community academies, and we would invite them out. We'd run them through a couple of scenarios as well and talk about the scenarios, the training. But Councilmember Cathcart, absolutely, you and anyone else, welcome to come out. We'll carve some time out to make that happen as well. And as far as community court, we wanted to do it. The folks that have registered the last couple times we tried to do that have not really been sufficient to justify the amount of resources. But we do hope once COVID is over that we'll be able to start to ramp those up again as well.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Council President.
I was just going to say I'm really happy that the instructors are going to have more options, and but that's probably even a better opportunity for getting community input, so they can choose those options based on that. I've been to multiple demonstrations now, and the episodes that I saw, just a lot of them were problematic, in my opinion, for a variety of reasons, whether they were stereotypes or they tended to be unrealistic and unlikely. But again, that would just be feedback from one person. That's not determinative of it. I'm not a police trainer. But I think if our training folks were getting regular feedback from interested community members, that would help inform them and, again, better align them with the community, which I know the department's working so hard to do. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll follow up with Ms. McConnell on that conversation. And I see some other council members want to talk, so I'll stop.
Yes, Ms. Wilkerson, go ahead.
Thank you. Mike, am I echoing off you? Sorry. So I want to follow up on Council President Beggs' comment about community input and some biases that are going on. I had got some feedback from some community members of color that have seen a couple of those scenarios. So like the cultural nuance is traditionally Black people will nod when they see each other. It's just what we do. But in this one training scenario, from what I got back, the officer thought that was a recognition of doing something wrong. So my question had been, we are taking scenarios that are in current day life, but in the design, are there people of color who are looking at this through a different lens or through the community? Because the same people who are looking at this don't look like me, I believe will have the same outcome, and we will continue to perpetuate the issues that we have. So I think that is critical, and I certainly would be advocating for that. And at the design level of these training videos, again, what is their inclusivity of folks of color, and what are their biases, and what really is their background? Because if those videos have implicit bias in them, I want somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. I know they have to be ready at the time that the incident happens, but I would like that ingrained in them also, along with the other responses that are being taught.
Thank you. Councilmember Mum.
And I'm just going to fall right up behind Councilmember Wilkerson on the design, and that was where I was going. Is it's important for us as a vendor to make that selection of scenarios that don't have those. I mean, if they're going to show, if you're making a decision between two, and also the feedback to the makers of those, because they need to change if they haven't already. They may have already. Because when I did it, it was probably, I don't know, Karen, what was that, 4 years ago we did VirTra?
Probably 3.5, 4 years ago.
Yeah, when we did it, there was some of that happening there too, but we're looking at it more closely now. So I wouldn't, and I know you're not shy, Chief Meidel, let them know. This is what we're looking for. And we, you know, when you're reshooting these, you got to do this. And maybe they already are. So just following up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Karen, who's your friend?
Well, she's missing me. She hasn't had me at home for a couple weeks. And so every time I come home, she's all over me.
Does she have something to say?
No, she's just, you know, she's a busybody and she's old, so she gets to do what she gets to do.
Okay, something to look forward to. Great. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. Any other questions? Sorry, I got really distracted. Love cats. All right. We have me up next, but actually it's going to be Ms. McConnell, and it is the Lexipol agreement for the police policy manual. And before she starts, I just want to say that I did go to the website. It is a progressive company, and they are ever changing and change based on, this is what I got from the website, based on national circumstances. So different than the others that I was seeing, this was, and Ms. McConnell is going to correct me or agree, this seems to be more of a progressive move forward. So take it away. Tell me I'm wrong or I'm right.
No, I think you're correct. And we've had Lexipol now. I don't know when we initially got a Lexipol, but we've had it since I've been here. They regularly send updates based on things that are happening in the nation, based on changes that happen just within the state and state laws here. And what happens is we get the updates, we go through them, because sometimes the updates don't apply to us, or they use terminology that is not necessarily applicable to what we're doing here. Like maybe we'll get a policy about a unit that we don't even have in Spokane PD. So we look through the policies that they update and make sure as to whether or not we want to accept the updates. And oftentimes I go to the subject matter expert. So we recently had one on one of our policies having to do with sexual assaults and sexual assault investigations. So I forward that to what I would say are SMEs, or the people and the detectives that are investigating it, to get their feedback to see, is this how we're running operations? Do their updates apply to SPD, or do we need to personalize it for us, if that makes sense? But I do believe that they are a progressive agency and that they stay on top of changes nationally and within the state.
Questions? No questions? Okay, thank you. Next up is New Mission Shelter update. I think that's going to be Tim, right? Tim, are you here?
I am. And it's actually Tim, and I've got Major Perrine with Salvation Army on the line as well.
Perfect.
I just thought it'd be good to hear it from the operators since they're the ones that are running the show. They've been operating for a couple weeks now. The transition from the arena to the mission shelter went well due to some good partnerships with Salvation Army, with the arena, with some city departments, and as well as the Guardians and Salvation Army. So, Major Perrine, if you'd like to give an update on how things are going at the mission site, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you for allowing us to join. I just have it's been in operation with us for 18 days, including today. I think it's been going very well. We've been working with with our neighbors and dealing with issues as they arrive. Some good news. Love to share good news. We've got one person headed off into drug treatment. We've been full almost the entire time with 102 folks. The average age is in the above 50, just in case you're wondering. 10 people so far in the past 18 days have gone off to permanent housing, and 5 people have full-time jobs have moved on. So some great things are happening with the program over there. There definitely still have issues with some folks that are just dealing with life, but we're working with them to help them put their life together and move on. So we're very excited about what's going on over there and would encourage all of you to come by and visit. I'm actually on vacation today, but I came in just so I could be with you guys. So I'm actually going to be gone for another 2 weeks, but our staff is doing a great job, but I just wanted to make sure I could share wonderful things that are happening.
Councilmember Mumm, go ahead, and then Stratton.
Tell us about the permanent housing piece. You know, we have such a tight housing market here in Spokane and so many limited resources. How are you able to do that? Maybe walk us through, once they come to you, how you get them into permanent housing.
That's a good question. How do we help people get into permanent housing? There's a lot of programs already available in town. And so obviously what we'd love to see for everybody is their ability to get a job and move into housing on their own, where we might be able to help them make a first month's rent or pay a deposit. That's the ultimate goal. Others, if they're, it's just they may not know what's available to them, and just helping them walk through the steps. When you're down at the lower ends of what you might consider a life for yourself, when you're homeless, I mean, that's not a great place to be. So I think sometimes people get so wound up in just surviving, they're not looking forward to how to thrive. And so our staff actually sits down, works with them, works them through the steps, gets them signed up into different programs, and then works through those steps. Because sometimes what for the different providers seems so obvious and easy, for somebody who's homeless might be, it's something that seems an insurmountable issue, and really it's just working through the progress. So our staff has been working with them on that to help them get connected with the different agencies in town to get them permanent housing. Obviously, we'd love to get everybody into some kind of housing. I always tell people I'm trying to work myself out of a job, but sadly, homelessness is something that's always going to be with us.
Well, 10% in 18 days is fabulous numbers. Congratulations.
Go ahead, Councilmember Stratton.
Just a quick question. Do we have any report or data from any negative issues in the neighborhood itself with residents? I've stopped getting emails, so I'm assuming that's a good thing, but just wanted to know if there have been instances where police have had to be called or neighbors have complained.
So we have had issues of neighbors complaining, and actually they were, as part of the meetings we put together with Tim and Tisha and the city, we were meeting prior to the opening of the center, and as you know, I'm sure you were getting lots of phone calls back then. And so people were complaining about the issues they were seeing already in the neighborhood. So I will say, today I walked over there from here and just walked the neighborhood just to make sure there wasn't anybody hanging around. And I did find one group of people that I had our security person go and talk to move them on. So there have been some issues for sure. Some of our guests and former guests have used some kind of substance, and then we're doing things they shouldn't have been doing. but the security and our staff help to move them on, get them away. So we're dealing with issues as they arrive. This past weekend, we had a gentleman that had a little bit too much to drink and climbed a tree outside the chiropractor's office. And so one of our staff went over there and was able to talk him down off the tree, and kind of get him helped. We're still working with him. Obviously, perfect scenario would be we able to get him to some kind of alcohol drug treatment program, but he's got to be ready to do that. But the good news is we were able to deal with directly with the neighbor and talk to him about the situation. They actually saw us come by, and even though the phone call started off kind of tense when she was reporting that, after it was all completed, she called and thanked us profusely for coming out and being proactive in the situation.
Can I ask one more quick question? Tim, if Tim's on the line, were we successful in changing the days or the times for those meetings so Councilmember Mom and myself can attend those, because they're set at a time that we can't always be there or be there most of the time?
I'd also like to attend as well because it borders my district as well. So.
Yeah, so we are working through that right now. We have a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to talk about what that would look like. But we did put the request in for the Tuesdays that work for both council members Mom and Stratton. So as soon as we get the thumbs up on that, I can let both council members Burke and Cathcart know as well.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks. Go ahead, Councilmember Cathcart.
When you say you've kind of moved them away, where is it that they go when that happens? Are they kind of moving further up into the neighborhood, back downtown to another shelter? I guess I'm just curious where they're heading off to. And then also a question for Tim is just how are the discussions regarding a good neighbor agreement going at this point in time?
So we have rules for our shelter, obviously, and when somebody has violated those, and one of them is you can't loiter in the neighborhood. So if somebody has violated that rule or is being a safety issue for other people, any of our other guests or our neighbors, obviously, we move them on to another shelter if possible. If they're not interested in that, we just tell them, look, you can't hang out here. And security will tell them, look, if you continue to hang out here, we'll have to call the police. They're going to come out. They're going to run your name. It's going to be very inconvenient for you. And usually that's enough to move them on. It's hard for us to know if they don't go to the other shelter, where they actually wind up. That's hard for us to know. And since obviously we don't require these folks to move on, to actually move into another shelter, there's no way for us to really, there's no meat, there's no teeth to anything we can say, really.
And then in regards to the Good Neighbor Agreement, still meeting on Fridays with community members that want to participate in that conversation. I know Mike Ormsby was out on vacation recently, but he's now working with Arian Schmidt, the regional project manager, and myself on that agreement, as well as with community members. So there's progress being made. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot of thoughts and opinions on what that looks like. And so I guess the best update I can give you is that we're still meeting and working with legal on that.
Okay. And I'm hoping to meet with Arian as well. And would it be possible for me to sit in on your next Friday meeting?
Yes, this coming Friday, that meeting is canceled, but I'll be sure to let her know you want to be part of the invite.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions from council president?
Yep. So this is a question either for the Salvation Army or for Tim, and that's the status of showers. I know that we're going to have to do some construction to install showers for the permanent use of the bridge shelter. But I'm just wondering how are we handling showers for residents at this point? And is there something that council could do to support with more funding to bring in portable showers on a weekly basis or something? So I'm just curious on that issue.
Yeah, so we actually purchased a shower trailer from American Onsite. It came in a couple weeks ago. There are some issues that they were having with the gas plumbing, so we are not using them at this time until those are fixed completely. We have 2 different agencies that we're working on, including American Onsite, to make sure that we can address those. And at this time, we're not offering the showers, or I should say, in partnership with Salvation Army, not offering the showers because it's just cold water at this time. So we're hopeful to get that resolved within the next week or 2.
Great. Thanks.
I just want to add to that. We have been able to work with some other folks to shuttle people over that would like the shower. Obviously, the best case scenario would be the showers in operation there. But thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. My other question is, in terms, sounds like you're at capacity. Thank you so much for doing that. But my question, I guess, is for Tim, is until the Cannon Street gets rehabilitated, I'm wondering what's our sense? Do we have enough? Are we providing enough beds for people who would be willing to use beds?
I think since we're talking about Cannon and Mission, you're speaking about single adults, and I would probably have to defer back to Salvation Army because I don't know how many people are being turned away. We do know that the colder season is coming up, so they did break ground last week. Our general contractors broke ground last week at the Cannon site, and so they've got their plan moving forward. The main thing that we're focused on over there is obviously the healthy and safe sheltering, which is bathrooms, showers, and some storage options, as well as opening that building up so that we can hold up to 80 people. As far as what the need is right now, Major Preen, I don't know if you guys are tracking how many people are being turned away, or if there are.
Right. So we're currently turning away up to 10 a night.
Any other questions, Council President?
No, thanks for the report.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councilmember Munn.
Is there anything that you have seen that we can do to speed up the process to help house these folks, other than creating new housing? Is the process as efficient as you think? Is there anything the city can do?
I want to say I'm very impressed with the hard work that was done to get the current building in place, and opening up Cannon would be a definite positive for that. And I think the one thing we all want to do, and I know we would all be in agreement, is making sure we're absolutely ready for winter so that folks aren't staying outside. And I always tell people we should never think of homelessness being illegal because someone's on the street. It should be illegal because we as society are allowing that to happen, meaning it's on us who are housed that to take care of those that are not. So it's just making sure that we're ready to go and we have a backup plan. The Cannon Streets are going to be great eventually when that gets fixed, but also even having a backup to the backup plan just to make sure that this winter, the police really should be encouraging folks to move in from the streets. And, I've been doing this ministry for over almost 25 years, and it breaks your heart when somebody freezes to death out there, and it's hard. And somebody you've been working with, and because I see that person as being just like the person that got a job and got their life back together. It was just a person needed a little bit more time, and for some reason, we as a society didn't enforce the law on that person and force them inside, and they wind up dead, and that is hard. And so I just want to say thank you for the city for all the hard work you've been doing and believing in us and partnering with us. But it's just making sure that we have some kind of plan in place prior to when it gets freezing outside, so our residents here aren't put in a position where they could die. And so that's about the best I could say. I know you're working hard already. I just want to make sure we have some kind of plan in place prior to November to make sure that I don't know what you want to call it, fit lie or whatever, but just it's really public safety. I care for you. I love you. I think you have great value, and I don't want to see you die on the street. And the bridge housing, that's going to be amazing.
Great. Thank you. I think we all share your sentiment and want to make sure people are safe. And living on the streets isn't safe, especially for women. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Councilmember Mumm, we're going to move on to your favorite subject, SIP loans.
Well, we did a lot of this work last Thursday, and I don't know if folks want to have more of a touch on it, but it seems like we landed on option 2. And is there any further concerns? There's just a little bit of new information, and Tim Donovan, are you on with us? He checked it on sales tax or on, revenue forecasting for the city. Are you here, Tim?
He might be on a phone call. I don't see him on the list.
Okay. So he sent me a note and said that and Tanya, you might want to chime in, that right now revenue is starting to perk up a little bit. And so we're feeling a little more positive. Tanya, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Mumm and Council President. I did provide a very brief presentation as part of your packet. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm not going to go through the presentation, but there are really just two questions that absolutely need to be answered today. There are other questions that you can answer today or at any other time. But today's real question is, which refinancing option do you want? And then how do you want to use whatever savings is generated from that refinancing option? One of the, and it's just more of a cautionary awareness perspective that I'd like to bring to the table is, yes, sales tax is looking a little bit more robust than we originally projected. We are updating those projections and will be formally presenting those at the September Finance Committee meeting. We also be updating for our 2021 Mayor's proposed budget during this month. But just a little tale of caution, because I am very conservative in my approach and want to ensure that our core services stay intact with folks that are working those services. But we have a couple things going on that we haven't seen the result of. First of all, with sales tax, the unemployment benefit of $600 a week, that additional pay that everybody was getting, may have been part of the reason why we're benefiting from sales tax now. Well, it's gone. We won't feel the impact of that $600 decrease in unemployment for a couple more months. So that's one cautionary tale, is people are going to start to behave a little differently now that those dollars are done. And there are some unemployment benefits that are just simply ending for folks. And we are still only in a phase 2. So there are still a lot of folks out there that are not working and have significantly reduced unemployment benefits. So they're going to spend a little differently going forward in August and forward. The other thing is school. School and the back to school sales are pretty significant of an economic driver. Well, schools continue to remain closed, and we're doing, as Paul puts it, fake school at home. You don't really need to dress your kids up for that, and you don't really need to go out and buy all of the items that we would normally procure at this time of year. So I'm a little hesitant at this time to say what sales tax, if it's really going to rebound or if it's going to continue as we've seen it. I also would project that Halloween, which is another really big holiday for sales tax sales, there's not going to be parties. There's not going to be maybe as much buying as there normally is for Halloween. We just don't know. And then all of our sports, fall sports that come into play. We're not going to have that either. So there's going to be still this continued economic pressure that we're going to feel. And from what I'm seeing, my crystal ball is really, really foggy right now. I'm very excited and very optimistic in the higher sales tax revenue that's not going to hurt us as bad as what we were projecting in March through June. But I'm not optimistic that sales tax is going to rescue all of our woes. And from that very conservative perspective, my best financial advice for the City Council is to be very conservative and continue to work as hard as you have to preserve those general fund reserves to the greatest extent possible. And one of the best ways is to also defer some decisions on the use of reserves until we turn an economic corner, until we really start going into phase 3 and we get people employed. I don't think there is any harm in deferring certain decisions. So with that, I know that you have other decisions. I just have the two questions in front of you. Which option do you want? There are options in front of you. Some will generate more general fund savings, and some will reduce less. And then what do you want to do, and how do you want to allocate those savings? So with that, I will be quiet.
So we can't vote at this meeting, and so I turn to Council President Biggs for process.
Yeah, I was just going to report, as Councilmember Mumm stated, we did talk about it on Thursday because we wanted to get you the information your staff needed to prepare the financial documents. And the proposal that we discussed was option 2 and applying those savings to the capital vehicle replacement fund. And we didn't vote on it, but nobody expressed any concern or opposition with that. So short of a vote, which would come at a legislative session, I think that's the main feedback. And I agree with you that in terms of the other part that we talked about, which was using the 1% property tax increases to fund the capital program going forward for a few years until we get to that amount of money that we can do it without further borrowing or debt service. We don't have to make that decision until the end of the year or the first of next year. And it'll be helpful to know that. But we did, I think, take pretty much the most conservative plan, which was to reduce our debt service and the length of our debt and try to pay as we go on capital expenditures going forward for public safety.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, I would. So I've really been thinking about this. I was able to have some conversations with Tanya, and I'm really thinking actually that option 3 is probably our best option. It's going to have our lowest debt service payments. It's going to generate a lot more revenue up front, or a lot more cash up front, and we can still invest the $720,000 into those capital expenditures. We can put the rest into our reserves, and then we can always refinance again next year to try and reduce the length of time. But it buys us time, and especially with so much unknown at this point in time, I think that probably is the best way forward from what I've seen and from the conversations I've had. So I can understand option 2, reducing the length of the SIP loan process, but I think we can still get there and also do things in a way that's preserving some dollars, because we just do not know what is going to happen the rest of this year on through to next year.
Any other council comments? Go ahead, Councilmember.
I just want to understand process here. Tanya, I think we have to take a formal vote, don't we?
Make sure I'm still okay. I can do it one of 2 ways. If we can't take a formal vote here, we can wait until you can take a formal vote, or I can prepare 2 sets of documents so that one or the other is ready to go, depending on how you want to proceed.
For what deadline, though? We don't have a meeting next week. I'm just worried about timing here.
I am as well, and it would have to go at your next scheduled meeting.
Ooh, that's the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we did it, Council President, on a Thursday.
Or you did an emergency tonight.
Did an emergency tonight.
Yeah, I think the reason we, am I on? The reason we talked about it on Thursday was so that we could give you the feedback that it seemed like most people were option 2, and so that you could prepare the documents for tonight. I thought that was the deadline we were supposed to have it done. And we don't have a busy agenda tonight, so it's not hard. But I don't know if you can do your documents in time, or if you want us to just do a resolution tonight, and then you know which documents. It seems like a lot of resources to do 2 sets of documents when I think we kind of know where council's leaning towards. So, but let us know whether you can do it tonight or whether you just want a resolution tonight.
I would have to check with our bond counsel to see if she has a resolution that could be prepared for tonight. But the rest of the documents would have to be prepared in the future regardless. We could not have all the documentation quite ready. But a resolution, I would have to check with Laura to make sure that it could be ready for tonight if that's the direction the council wants to go.
Okay, let's do that. That'll probably be the fastest way, because then we just authorize through the resolution, and then the paperwork is just something you don't need to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work for you, Tanya?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any other council comments about this subject?
So Tanya, if you could communicate with Council President on what Laura says on the resolution, I'm happy to sponsor it and get it on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will do that.
And Tonya, I am entirely impressed that you do have a crystal ball, even though it is foggy, because none of us have one. So thanks for that. So the next one is not really mine, it's Councilmember Stratton. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just being reminded that if we're going to do that resolution, we need to probably get a copy of it during the 3:30 session so that we can suspend the rules and put it on the agenda for tonight in case people want to comment on it. So just throwing that out there. I don't know how complex it is, so we'll see.
No pressure.
Make a phone call.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya. All right, so the next one is not really mine. It's Councilmember Stratton's. So I don't know who's going to be briefing this. It's the for hire.
I think Jake Hensley can do it, can't you, Jake?
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me? This is Jake Hensley.
We can hear you.
Can hear you.
Okay, yes, I'll be working with my Echo right now.
Okay, Jake, we're not hearing you.
This is Tanya. Jake is getting set up right now. We just had to change cords.
Okay, so Brian, Council President, why don't you go ahead and we'll come back to Jake. Why don't you go ahead with the CARES piece?
Yes, just want to let everyone know that we have the COVID community response work group with the mayor and council members Wilkerson, Stratton, myself. Tanya Wallace was on it for a while, but then she was on vacation, so Garrett joined in. And Sally Stouffer did an awesome job from a staff level of keeping us organized. And we had a second round of solicitations for RFPs and got those back and went through that process. We met last week in depth on the proposals, and then we met again today, and we were able to make our decisions based on what we believe the merits were of the program, as opposed to prioritizing money. And so we were able to fund all the projects that we thought met our requirements at the levels of funding that we wanted to. And we're also able to preserve capacity for the city to request some CARES funding as well, to essentially come close to exhausting the $6.6 million that the governor allocated to us. But that said, because there's a deadline of getting those dollars spent in mid to late October, we're trying to speed up the process. And so we told Sally that we would try to enact a resolution this evening that would, from a very high level, approve the funding of the specific agencies and the amounts of money. We've circulated that list. It doesn't go into actually the areas of services, but I would tell you that the vast majority of them were for either helping students, childcare, those types of things, where almost all of it was going towards that. Brian McClatchy's working on a resolution that would express council support for that. Then that lets Sally Stouffer enter into contracts right away for those that are under 50,000, and then negotiate with the other folks for larger ones and let them know that the money's coming so that they can start planning to spend it. So it's kind of a rush job, but for a good cause. And so I just wanted to brief it at committee here, since that will probably be coming your way within a few minutes, and open it up for any questions or concerns.
Questions for Council President? Yeah. I just want to thank you. I know people on that committee worked hard, and it's grueling to try to decide who's worthy, essentially, and who doesn't need it as much as somebody else. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Do we have Shake? Are you ready to go?
Yes, Councilmember Kinnear, I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay, so what we were trying to do is propose some amendments for the for-hire ordinance. And I'm going to be sharing my screen here, put together just a quick PowerPoint in order to keep myself organized. But a lot of these have been discussed since the new ordinance, that the 1034A went into effect in January 2019. Most recently, we discussed them at the March 2nd public safety meeting. I just want to emphasize that these do not change the intent of the ordinance. They're more just for practical purposes in order to make it more feasible for operations. Now that we're coming up on September and October, we're really trying to get these in place as soon as possible with the COVID environment and the potentially not being open for business. A lot of our for-hire drivers so far have been coming into City Hall. The good news is that we are getting very close. TNL has been working with PMO and IT in order to get an online licensing option up and running, and we think that we can deliver that within the next few weeks to a month. However, a lot of these changes that we're trying to propose are critical for its success. So I know we have Labor Day next week, but trying to get these approved by September 14th. So I just have a couple slides here. The First Amendment we're proposing, currently all licenses are expiring on October 31st. We are trying to get that changed for just the for-hire driver licenses to be a year from the date of issuance. The for-hire operator, what I call the company license, and the vehicle licenses would remain on October 31st. But this would be more consistent with how the ordinance and the SMC was prior to the change in January 2019. It will smooth out some of our capacity issues during September and October and reduce the amount of prorating so that the online module for licensing will function more smoothly. The next two changes can be taken together, but they have to do with for-hire, the driver licenses requirements. There's currently a inconsistency between for TNC drivers and taxi licenses, or taxi drivers, where the TNC driver will need to attest their affiliation, whether with Uber and or Lyft. We would like to extend that affiliation for drivers so that they have to test with, that they're affiliated with certain taxi associations. And this should help with some of our the retention requirements, such as background checks. Currently, TNCs are required to retain that documentation for their drivers, while the taxis have been retained by the city. But by getting those on the same, treating those the same will also help out with the online module. We just discovered that with the fact that this ordinance and the document requirements are audited by the city and enforced through civil infractions, that it's just not necessary for us, the city, to retain those. This next one has to do with audits. Our internal audit staff have reviewed it just to try to make it more feasible and to be audited. Currently, just to change those parameters for the random sampling, which is done twice a year, selecting 25 random drivers. We'd like to change that from drivers for rides that have originally originated within the city of Spokane within the last 90 days to the last calendar year. And, sorry, the rest of these are just cleanup. Right now, the DOL Washington State endorsement, I'd like to move that from the for-hire driver licenses section to the vehicles, as this endorsement only pertains to the vehicle. We'd also like to omit the emissions test, the requirement to produce a certificate, as emissions testing is no longer required in Washington State. And then lastly, we added a definition for medical cars. It's referred to in the ordinance, but it's not defined. And we've cleared up some of the confusion with the in the violation section with the requirement to have a telephone number, web page, and email address, making it more all-encompassing, saying the contact information provided within the application process. And that's all I have. Are there any questions for me?
Questions for Jake? Go ahead, Councilmember Stratton.
I just wanted to comment, Jake, thank you so much for your patience. This has been a crazy time, and I appreciate you kind of just jumping in and taking over that. I wanted to let everybody know that Brian McClatchy and I have looked at that. We were involved in those early discussions and the original ordinance with Council Member Fagan, starting two years ago. And we were Brian and I both looked at them. I have no problems with the changes. And Brian didn't either.
I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Stratton. You've worked on this for 2 years, and at times, honestly, I thought we were going to pull our hair out, our collective hair out. It was grueling, but you persevered, and I think we're in a good place right now. So whoever is going to, you're going to be sponsoring this, I'd like to get my name off. This is your baby. Councilmember Cathcart, comment, question?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have any major issues with the cleanup as presented. I just think that we probably should have some kind of conversation over the sustainability right now of for-hire services and what fees we're charging them, whether it's taxi, Uber, Lyft, etc. I know I came back from the airport recently in a taxi, and they are struggling a lot right now to get ridership with no tourism basically going on in our city. So with all the cleanup, that's great, but I think we're going to have conversations perhaps around the fees at this point in time just for them to survive.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? No, you guys are very quiet. All right. Our next meeting is October 5th. Can you believe it? It's going to be Christmas before you know it. So thanks, everyone, for attending, and we will see you at the 3:30. Our meeting is adjourned.